The doctors said it was impossible. The night you almost didn't make it through. When your heart stuttered like a broken clock at 3:47 a.m. When the shadows gathered at the foot of your bed, whispering that your time had come. They were wrong. This is not a coincidence that you're hearing these words right now. Not after what happened to you last Tuesday. Not after that dream where you saw yourself standing in pure light, your body trembling as something ancient awakened in your bones. What if I told you that everything they taught you about aging, about weakness, about the limitations of your flesh, was a carefully constructed lie? There are forces in this world, dark, calculating forces that have spent decades trying to convince you that your best days are behind you. They planted seeds of doubt when your knees began to ache. They whispered forgotten when your children stopped calling. They hissed powerless when the world moved on without asking your permission. But tonight, oh, tonight something shifts in the heavenly realms. Your body, this very vessel they told you was Philingis, about to become the epicenter of a divine earthquake that will shake the foundations of hell itself. The same joints that creak when you rise from your chair are about to carry resurrection power. The same eyes that struggle with small print are about to see into dimensions hidden since Eden. You've felt it, haven't you? That strange electricity in your fingertips during prayer. That moment when time seemed to stop and you heard your name spoken by a voice that wasn't human. That night when you woke up and knew that angels were standing guard at your doorway. They tried to silence you. They tried to bury your calling under diagnoses, under dismissive smiles, under the cruel arithmetic of birthdays. But what they didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, is that God saves His finest wine for last. Before I reveal what's about to happen to your body tonight, before I share the vision that made demons flee and angels weepy, need to thank every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, I invite you to plant that seed of faith. Because what I'm about to tell you next, what heaven downloaded into my spirit at 4:33 this morning, will explain why your body has been preserved for this exact moment in history. And what happened next made the darkness tremble. Are you ready? The command has been issued. Lay the body down. They thought you would die quietly. They thought the years would silence you, that the weight of decades would finally crush the fire they could never understand. They watched you age, counted your wrinkles like victories, whispered behind closed doors that your time was running out. They were right about one thing. Something is dying tonight, but it's not what they think. You felt it this morning, didn't you? That strange heaviness when you opened your eyes, not the familiar ache of arthritis or the usual fog of another sleepless night. No, this was different. This was holy weight, divine gravity pulling at something deep inside your chest, something that has been fighting to stay alive for far too long. The command came at 3:33 a.m., not in words, but in knowing. Not in thunder, but in the terrifying stillness that only comes when heaven itself holds its breath. Lay it down. 3 words that shook the foundations of everything you've built. 3 words that made your false self tremble like a condemned building marked for demolition. You've been carrying a corpse, beloved. For 70 years, maybe 80, you've been dragging around a version of yourself that was never meant to survive this long. The you that learned to smile when your heart was breaking, the you that swallowed rage like bitter medicine, the you that dimmed your light so others wouldn't be blinded by your glory. That body, that false vessel of compromise and fear has reached its expiration date. And God is not asking anymore. He's commanding. You see, there's a holy principle written into the fabric of creation itself. God never resurrects what he has not first buried. Every miracle begins with a funeral. Every testimony starts with a death certificate. The same God who spoke Lazarus out of the tomb first let him rot for 4 days. The same Christ who conquered death first surrendered to it completely. Tonight, you join that sacred lineage. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know, what he's desperately trying to hide behind your failing eyesight and creaking joints. This death is not defeat. This burial is not abandonment. This is Coronation Day in the kingdom of heaven. For decades, you've been living in survival mode. Every morning, you've awakened not to purpose but to preservation, not to destiny but to duty. You've become an expert at existing, at enduring, at making it through another day without breaking completely. But God didn't keep you alive this long just to survive. He preserved you for this moment, this holy, terrible, beautiful moment, when everything false must die so everything true can finally live. The body you're laying down tonight isn't just flesh and bone, it's every lie you believed about your worth. It's every limitation you accepted as truth. It's the voice that told you it was too late, you were too old, too broken, too forgotten to matter in the kingdom of God. That voice? It dies tonight. The you that begged for crumbs when you were born to feast at the king's table, dead. The you that apologized for taking up space when heaven itself makes room for your glory, buried. The you that believed your best days were behind you when God has been preparing your greatest hour, 6 feet under, never to rise again. You feel it happening already, don't you? That strange sensation, like something is being pulled from your chest. That's not your soul leaving. That's your false self being extracted like a tumor from healthy tissue. It hurts because it's been there so long you thought it was part of you. It wasn't. It never was. What remains when the false dies? Only what's eternal, only what's true. Only the you that existed in God's mind before the foundations of the world, the you he's been waiting decades to unveil. Some of you are fighting this. Your hands are gripping tight to the familiar dysfunction, to the comfortable coffin of your lesser self. You're thinking, but this is all I know. This broken version is all I have left. Listen carefully, beloved, because this is where heaven thunder meets human fear. You cannot hold on to death and reach for resurrection at the same time. Your hands must be empty to receive what God is offering. Your old self must be buried for your true self to rise. This is why it had to happen now. Not 10 years ago when you still had the strength to pretend. Not 5 years from now when it might be too late. Tonight, this holy, appointed, terrible, wonderful night when heaven itself has cleared its schedule to witness your transformation. The angels aren't weeping for what you're losing. They're preparing celebration songs for what's about to emerge. The enemy isn't panicking because you're dying. He's terrified because he knows what comes next. And you're standing at the threshold between who you were forced to become and who you were born to be. Between the small story others wrote for you and the epic God penned before time began. Tonight, the Lord doesn't ask. He commands. Lay down the false you're, be buried with it. Because tomorrow, when the sun rises on your empty tomb, something else will be walking in your skin. Something that looks like you but moves like lightning. Something that speaks with your voice but carries heaven's authority. Something that cannot die because it was never truly mortal to begin with. The command has been issued. The grave has been prepared. The false self is taking its last breath. Let it go, beloved. Let it die. Let it return to the dust from which it should never have risen. Because what's coming next, what's waiting on the other side of this holy death, will make every moment of suffering worth it. The old you is finished, and the real you is just beginning. The shaking isn't random. It's resurrection beginning. Your hands trembled this morning when you reached for your coffee cup, not from age, not from weakness, from power trying to break through. That pressure in your chest at 2:47 a.m. last night, the one that made you sit up gasping, wondering if this was the end, that wasn't your heart failing. That was your heart expanding to hold what's coming. The dizziness that struck you in the grocery store last week, when the fluorescent lights suddenly felt like they were piercing your skull that wasn't a medical emergency. That was heaven rewiring your frequency. They want you to believe you're falling apart. The doctors with their charts, the children with their worried glances, the mirror with its cruel testimony. But what if I told you that what looks like breakdown is actually breakthrough? What if every symptom, every shake, every moment of strange exhaustion is actually resurrection power breaking through fossilized foundations? You've been feeling it for weeks now. The isolation that came out of nowhere. Friends who suddenly stopped calling. Family members who look at you differently, like you're speaking a language they can't understand. The world feels louder, harsher, more abrasive than ever before. Colors seem too bright. Sounds pierce deeper. Even your own bed feels foreign some nights. This isn't dementia approaching. This is dimension shifting. Your nervous system, that beautiful, intricate network that has carried you through decades of joy and sorrow, is being completely recalibrated. Not by disease, by divinity. The same God who spoke galaxies into existence is now speaking new frequencies into your cellular structure. He's not destroying you. He's deconstructing the prison that kept the real you hidden for 70 years. The earthquake in your spirit isn't destruction. It's heaven clearing space for your throne. Remember when you were young and they told you to act your age, to settle down, to be reasonable? Every time you dimmed your light to fit their comfort, you built another bar in the cage. Every time you swallowed your truth to keep the peace, you added another layer of concrete over your divine design. And now God is taking a holy sledgehammer to every false structure. That's why your body feels like a battlefield. The trembling isn't weakness, it's the old foundations cracking. The exhaustion isn't agites, energy being redirected from maintaining illusions to building truth. The strange sensations, the electrical pulses, the moments when time seems to skip like a broken record, these aren't symptoms of decline. These are labor pains of becoming. You know what a controlled demolition looks like? They don't just randomly blow up a building. They place charges at strategic points, weakening the structure precisely, so it falls into its own footprint, making room for something magnificent. That's what heaven is doing to you right now. Every ache is a precisely placed charge. Every moment of confusion is dust clearing from the demolition. But here's what they didn't tell you about. Resurrection, it requires death first. Not the death they're expecting. Not the quiet fade into irrelevance they've prepared for you. This is the death of every lie you believed about your limitations. The death of every voice that said you were too old, too tired, too broken to matter. The death of the false self that learned to play small, to survive in a world that couldn't handle your magnitude. That person you've been pretending to be for decades. Tonight, they meet their end. And in their place rises something ancient, something that was hidden in your DNA before your grandmother's grandmother drew her first breath. Something that hell has been trying to suppress since the day you were born. Because they always knew that if you ever remembered who you really were, their entire system would crumble. So they fed you pills to numb the visions. They gave you diagnoses to explain away the prophecies. They surrounded you with noise to drown out the voice of heaven. But it didn't work, did it? Because here you are, shaking not with fear but with emergence, trembling not with weakness but with barely contained glory. The isolation you're feeling, that's not abandonment. That's God creating a sterile field for your transformation. You can't birth the new while crowds of the old are watching. You can't emerge as light while surrounded by those who profit from darkness. This divine loneliness is actually divine positioning. Moses spent 40 years in isolation before he became the deliverer. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness before he began his ministry. You've spent decades in the wilderness of misunderstanding, and now your ministry begins. Not in a pulpit, not with a title, but with presence so powerful it shifts atmospheres without words. That's why your nervous system is being rewired. The old circuits could only carry so much light before they burned out. But these new pathways, they're being carved by the finger of God himself. They can carry frequencies that would have killed the old you. They can channel power that prophets dreamed of. Every time you feel that strange electricity in your spine, that's an upgrade installing. Every time your heart races for no reason, that's capacity expanding. Every time you wake at 3 a.m. with your whole body vibrating, that's heaven running diagnostics on your new system. You're not having a breakdown, you're having a breakthrough. You're not falling apart, you're falling into place. The shaking will intensify before it stops. The pressure will build before it releases. The old will scream louder as it dies. But you will stand in the center of this holy hurricane, unshaken by the shaking, because you finally understand, this isn't the end of your story. This is where your real story begins. And heaven isn't just watching. Heaven is applauding. Your old self has expired. Stop resuscitating the corpse. Listen to me very carefully right now. That voice in your head, the one that tells you to play small, to wait for permission, to apologize for taking up space, it's not your conscience, it's a corpse. And you've been performing CPR on a dead thing for decades. Tonight, we pull the plug. I know you feel it. That internal war between who you were told to be and who God created you to be. For 70 years, maybe 80, you've been negotiating with an imposter. You've been feeding a version of yourself that was never supposed to survive this long. The shy one, the silent one, the one who learned to say, "I'm fine," when your soul was screaming. That identity, it expired years ago, but you kept it on life support. You dressed it up for Sunday service. You let it answer the phone when your children called. You allowed it to make decisions about your destiny. And all this time, all this precious, irreplaceable time, the real you has been suffocating underneath, gasping for air, begging to be released. God is not obligated to bless the version of you he never created. Let that sink in. Every prayer you've prayed from behind that mask, every dream you've deferred to keep that false self comfortable, heaven doesn't recognize that signature. It's like trying to cash a check with someone else's name on it. The Bank of Heaven says, "I don't know this person." You know what's been happening? You've been living as a spiritual fugitive in your own life, running from the bigness of your true identity, hiding from the magnitude of what God placed inside you before you took your first breath. And that Pharaoh, that ancient fear that taught you to shrink, it's been your warden for too long. But here's what the darkness didn't count on. You can't kill what God has ordained. You can bury it, you can deny it, you can dress it in acceptable clothing and teach it to whisper instead of roar, but you cannot destroy what carries his fingerprint. And tonight, that buried truth is clawing its way to the surface. You feel it, don't you? That anger rising in your chest. That's not sin, that's resurrection rage. That's your true self finally saying, enough. Enough pretending. Enough performing. Enough playing dead when you were born to shake the earth. You're not losing your identity. You're being delivered from your imposter. Every time someone told you to calm down, to be reasonable, to act your age, they were unknowingly serving as guards at the tomb of your false self. They thought they were protecting you, but they were protecting the very thing that's been eating you alive from the inside. That expired version of you, it learned all the right words. It knew how to nod and smile. It mastered the art of spiritual camouflage. It could quote scripture while denying the very power those scriptures promised. It was religious but not free. It was acceptable but not authentic. It was safe but not alive. And God? He's done watching you drag that corpse around. You see, there's a difference between who you became to survive and who you were created to be. One was born from trauma, the other was born from triumph. One learned to flinch, the other was designed to stand. One begs for crumbs, the other owns the bakery. The world trained you to be ashamed of your hunger for more. They called it pride, they called it selfishness. They wrapped chains around your ankles and called them wisdom. But what if I told you that your dissatisfaction with smallness isn't rebellion, it's recognition? Recognition that you were never meant to fit in a box someone else built. This is why you've felt so tired lately. Not physically tired, soul tired. Because maintaining a false identity takes enormous energy. It's like wearing a costume that's 3 sizes too small and pretending it fits. Every breath is labored, every movement is restricted, every dream has to be edited down to fit the narrative. But Tonito, tonight the costume tears. You cannot enter your next season wearing dead man's clothes. You cannot walk into divine appointment dressed in expired identity. The promise is waiting for you. They have your real name on them, not the pseudonym you've been using to survive. God is systematically dismantling every support system that kept your false self alive. The people who only loved your performance, they're leaving. The situations that required you to shrink, they're closing. The comfort zones that became cages, they're being shaken until the doors fall off. This isn't cruelty, this is kindness. Because the real you, the one that's been waiting in the wings, the one that remembers what God whispered over your life before you were born, that version of you cannot coexist with the imposter. Light and lies cannot share the same space. Truth and pretense cannot shake hands. So yes, it feels like death, because it is death. The death of everything that was never supposed to define you. You're experiencing identity exorcism. And it's supposed to feel exactly like this: violent, disorienting, liberating all at once. Like being born and dying in the same breath. Like losing everything and finding yourself in the ruins. Stop trying to revive what God is killing. Stop running back to check the pulse of an identity that heaven has already pronounced dead. Stop negotiating with the voices that want you small, manageable, controllable. The anger you feel, let it burn. It's not destroying you, it's cremating everything that isn't you. And from those ashes, watch what rises. Not a sanitized version, not a people-pleasing phantom, but the raw, real, resurrection power of who you've always been. Your old self has expired, and resurrection doesn't knock, it kicks down doors. This is not anxiety. It's awakening. That trembling in your hands isn't weakness. It's power trying to find its way out. For months, maybe years, you've been telling yourself something's wrong. Your heart races at 3 a.m. Your chest tightens in crowded rooms. Your hands shake when you try to hold your coffee cup steady. The doctors gave it a NAMI: anxiety, panic, age-related tremors. They handed you pills in little brown bottles and patted your shoulder with that practiced sympathy. They were looking at the symptom. They missed the glory. What if I told you that every single tremor, every unexplained tear, every moment your body felt like it was betraying you, was actually your spirit breaking through walls that took 70 years to build? What if that racing heart wasn't fear at all, but your soul recognizing its appointment with destiny? You weren't created for normal. That's why normal is rejecting you. Think about it. When did the shaking start? Right after that prayer where you finally told God you were ready. Right after that dream where you saw yourself glowing like molten gold. Right after you whispered, "Use me," and meant it for the first time in decades. Your nervous system isn't breaking down, it's breaking open. Like a butterfly fighting its way out of a chrysalis, your divine nature is pushing against flesh that was never meant to contain this much light. Those tears that come from nowhere, that's not depression. That's your soul remembering who you were before the world taught you to be small. That pressure in your chest, that's not anxiety. That's eagle's wings trying to unfold in a cage built for sparrows. The medical establishment will never understand this. How could they? They're trained to see malfunction where heaven sees metamorphosis. They diagnose disorder where God declares transformation. They want to medicate what the Holy Spirit is activating. But you know better, don't you? You've felt it in those quiet moments between sleep and waking. That cosmic silence that fills your bedroom at 4 a.m. isn't empty, it's pregnant with possibility. It's the universe holding its breath while you transform. It's creation itself leaning in to witness what happens when a child of God finally stops pretending to be merely human. This is why your old life doesn't fit anymore. This is why conversations feel shallow, why television seems like noise, why the things that used to satisfy now leave you starving. You're not becoming antisocial, you're becoming celestial. Your frequency is shifting so radically that the world's static can't reach you anymore. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Awakening always is. Moses' hand trembled when he reached for the burning bush. Mary's knees shook when the angel appeared. Paul fell blind on the Damascus road. Transformation has never been gentle. It comes like labor, pains intense, overwhelming, undeniable. But what emerges from that pain changes everything. Your body is learning to hold voltage it was never trained for. Your cells are remembering their original blueprint, the one written before fear, before shame, before the world convinced you that shuffling through life was enough. Every shake, every tear, every moment of overwhelm is your system upgrading to carry divine frequency. The chosen don't break down, they break open. And when they do, when that shell finally cracks and falls away, what emerges isn't just different, it's devastating to darkness. Because a soul that's been compressed for 7 decades doesn't just expand, it explodes, it radiates. It illuminates every shadow in a 10-mile radius just by existing. This is what they're really afraid of. Not your anxiety, your awakening. Because an awakened elder is heaven's secret weapon. You've got the wisdom of years mixed with the fire of fresh revelation. You've got the patience of someone who's waited lifetimes condensed with the urgency of someone who finally understands there's no more time to waste. You've got scars that have turned to armor and disappointments that have crystallized into determination. So let your hands shake, let the tears fall, let your chest feel like it might burst with the magnitude of what's moving through you. This isn't your body failing. This is your body finally succeeding at what it was designed to do: conduct heaven's electricity straight into Earth's darkness. They told you it was anxiety because they didn't have a diagnosis for divinity. They said you were having panic attacks because they couldn't pronounce Pentecost. They prescribed medication for what required only meditation, the kind where you sit still long enough for God to finish what He started in you. Tonight, right now, in this very moment, I need you to place your trembling hand over your racing heart. Feel that? That's not a medical condition. That's a cosmic countdown. That's heaven's rhythm replacing Earth's. That's your original frequency breaking through decades of static. You are not falling apart. You are falling into place. And the most beautiful part, this is just the beginning. Because once your body learns to channel this kind of power without shutting down, once your nervous system adapts to carrying glory instead of just gravity, oh, beloved, the mountains you'll move won't even know what hit them. So breathe, deep, let it shake, let it break, let it remake you from the inside out. Because tomorrow, when you wake up, you won't just feel different. you'll finally feel like yourself. The self-heaven has been waiting for. The self-hell has been running from. The self that was worth every moment of this beautiful, terrible, glorious awakening. The ego is screaming because it's being evicted. The voice in your head is getting louder tonight, isn't it? That desperate, panicked voice that sounds like you but isn't you. The one that's been running the show for 70 years, maybe more. It's throwing everything it has at you right now, every fear, every doubt, every perfectly logical reason why you should stay small, stay quiet, stay exactly where you are. But here's what that voice doesn't want you to know. It's not getting louder because it's winning. It's getting louder because it's dying. Your ego, that false king who's been sitting on the throne of your mind since childhood, just received an eviction notice from the court of heaven. And tonight, the bailiffs have arrived. You built that ego brick by brick, didn't you? Every time someone told you that you weren't good enough, you added a wall. Every betrayal taught you to perform instead of just be. Every loss convinced you that protecting yourself was more important than expressing your truth. Layer after layer, year after year, until you couldn't tell where the armor ended and you began. That mental fog you've been walking through lately, that's not confusion. That's the smoke from a burning throne room. The irrational anger that rises when someone questions your carefully constructed identity. That's not you losing control. That's a false king realizing his crown is made of paper. The ego doesn't die quietly. It goes down swinging, screaming, negotiating, manipulating. It'll tell you that without it, you're nothing. It'll remind you of every time being vulnerable got you hurt. It'll show you mental movies of what happens to people who dare to live without masks. But God isn't watching those movies. He's not impressed by the ego's tantrum. He's not negotiating with a squatter in his temple. You see, 30 years ago, when you compromised your truth to keep the peace that wasn't wisdom, that was ego whispering, play it safe. 20 years ago, when you dimmed your light because it made others uncomfortable, that wasn't humility. That was ego insisting, don't rock the boat. Last year, when you almost spoke up about what God showed you in that dream but stayed silent, that wasn't patience. That was ego hissing, they'll think you're crazy. The voice telling you to settle was never God. It was ego in disguise, and it's being silenced tonight. Your soul is rising up from places the ego buried it. Those moments when tears come from nowhere, that's your soul breaking through concrete. That strange sensation like you're wearing clothes that don't fit anymore, that's because the ego's costume is 3 sizes too small for who you're becoming. The war inside you isn't between good and evil. It's between who you really are and who you learn to pretend to be. Every role you played, the perfect parent, the devoted spouse, the reliable worker, the one who never complains, those weren't you. Those were ego's performances, and the show is being cancelled. You know what terrifies the ego most? The moment you realize you don't need it. The moment you understand that God didn't create you to hide behind a fortress of fear. He created you to walk in the garden with Him, naked and unashamed, just like in the beginning. That inner conflict tearing you apart, those are labor pains. Your true self is being born, and the ego is the umbilical cord being cut. It hurts because separation always hurts. But what emerges doesn't need that lifeline anymore. Tonight, the ego is throwing its final tantrum. It's pulling out every trick: shame from 1962, fear from 1985, that failure from 2003. It's recruiting every voice that ever made you feel small, replaying every moment you weren't chosen, weren't seen, weren't valued. This isn't torture, this is testimony. Every accusation the ego hurls is evidence of how long you've survived its tyranny. But watch what happens when you stop fighting back. Watch what happens when you simply say, Thank you for keeping me safe all these years. Your services are no longer required. The ego expects a battle. Give it a blessing instead. It prepared for war. Offer it retirement. It can't fight what won't engage. It can't rule what won't bow. You're not killing your ego tonight. You're not that cruel. You're simply removing it from the driver's seat and putting it in the trunk where it belongs. It can come along for the ride, but it doesn't get to touch the wheel anymore. Your soul has places to go that ego's GPS can't find. Feel that? That lightness creeping in around the edges of your awareness? That's what it feels like when a false king steps down. That's the sensation of your soul taking its first full breath in decades. The throne is empty now, and only one voice echoes in the chamber, the same voice that spoke you into existence, calling you by your real name. The one ego made you forget, but you remember now, don't you? The eviction is complete, the kingdom is yours, and ego's screaming has become heaven's silence. You are not dying, you are being made dangerous. They thought fear would break you. It backfired. Every night you felt your body betray you, the trembling hands, the racing heart, the cold sweats at 3 a.m. They thought these were signs of your surrender. They counted on your flesh growing weak. They bet everything on your spirit crumbling under the weight of years, of loss, of watching the world forget your name. But heaven saw something else entirely. What felt like dying was actually divine demolition, not destruction, reconstruction. Every symptom they called weakness was actually your soul breaking through walls that took decades to build. Walls of politeness, walls of silence, walls of don't make waves and stay in your place. God wasn't killing you. He was killing what they built around you. You see, transformation isn't gentle to the parts of you constructed in fear. It's violent. It has to be. You can't birth a warrior through whispers. You forge them in fire. And that fire you've been feeling? That wasn't fever. That was heaven's furnace, melting down everything false until only pure steel remained. They never told you this truth. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the loudest or the youngest or the strongest. It's the one who has nothing left to lose because they've already lost it, all and survived. It's the one who died to fear itself and came back speaking a language darkness doesn't understand. That's you now. You're not falling apart. You're being reconstructed into a weapon the enemy can't recognize. Think about it. Every attack against you has failed. Every weapon formed crumbled. Not because you were lucky, not because you fought back, but because you did something far more devastating. You surrendered to a higher power. You let God fight through you. And when the Almighty inhabits human flesh, hell doesn't stand a chance. Your arthritis, those aren't just aching joints. Those are battle scars from spiritual warfare. Your insomnia, that's not age. That's heaven keeping you awake for night watch. Because God needs intercessors who know what 3 a.m. prayers can do. Your heart palpitations, that's not weakness. That's your spirit trying to contain more power than your body was originally designed to hold. You didn't fight fire with fire, you transcended the battlefield entirely. While they were playing checkers, God was teaching you chess. While they schemed in shadows, you were learning to walk in light so bright it blinds demons. They prepared for the person you used to be, but that person died. What rose in their place is something they never calculated for, a soul that's been to hell's doorstep and back, carrying heaven's authorization. You know what makes you truly dangerous? It's not your anger, it's your peace. It's not your revenge, it's your forgiveness. It's not your voice, it's your silence. When someone has been where you've been, seen what you've seen, survived what you've survived, and still chooses love over bitterness, that's not human, that's divine. And divinity wrapped in human flesh is hell's worst nightmare. They thought isolation would break you. Instead, it became your sanctuary. They thought rejection would define you. Instead, it refined you. They thought age would limit you. Instead, it unlocked dimensions of power reserved only for those who've lived long enough to see through every lie. You didn't fall. You rose. You didn't run. You stood. You didn't flinch. You smiled. And that smile, that quiet, knowing smile that crosses your lips when others panic, that's the smile of someone who's already been through the worst and discovered something magnificent. Rock bottom is just heaven's launching pad. Death's door is just heaven's anteroom. The end of your strength is just the beginning of his. You carry something now that can't be taught in seminaries or downloaded from the internet. You carry the authority of survival, the credential of endurance, the doctorate of "I'm still here." And in the spirit realm, those are the only degrees that matter. Your very existence is a threat now, not because you're perfect, but because you're proof. Proof that grace is real, proof that resurrection happens daily, proof that what the enemy meant for evil, God meant for elevation. So no, you're not dying. You're not even declining. You're being distilled into something so pure, so powerful, so dangerous to the kingdom of darkness that they're holding emergency meetings in hell trying to figure out how to handle you. But it's too late. The transformation is complete. The butterfly has emerged. The warrior has awakened. And all of heaven is standing at attention, waiting to see what God will do through a human being who finally understands their true power isn't in fighting. It's in being. Being unbreakable because you've already been broken, being unstoppable because you've already been stopped, being fearless because you've already faced your worst fear and found God waiting on the other side. They wanted you weak. God made you a weapon. And the most beautiful part, you never even had to raise your fist. God is not polishing you. He's replacing you. They told you this was about improvement. They lied. What's happening to you tonight isn't a renovation project. It's a demolition. And the wrecking ball? It's made of pure, unfiltered glory. You've spent decades trying to fix yourself. Therapy sessions where you unpacked childhood wounds. Self-help books stacked beside your bed like paper prayers. Morning affirmations spoken into bathroom mirrors, hoping today would be different. You thought if you could just polish away the rough edges, smooth out the cracks, maybe, just maybe, you'd finally become worthy of the calling you feel burning in your chest. But God isn't interested in your improvement plan. He's not here to buff out your scratches or repaint your surface. He's here with a shovel and a resurrection certificate. Because what needs to happen to you can't be achieved through refinement. It requires replacement. This isn't self-help, this is self-death. And the true you, the eternal you, doesn't need upgrading, it needs unveiling. You felt it last night, didn't you? That strange sensation like your soul was being pulled through your skin. That moment when you looked in the mirror and saw a stranger wearing your face. That wasn't confusion, that was clarity. You were witnessing the beginning of the end, not of your life, but of your lie. The lie that says you need to earn your transformation. The lie that whispers you're too old, too broken, too far gone for radical change. The lie that convinced you God works like a mechanic, tinkering with parts instead of speaking new creations into existence. Tonight, every cell in your body is receiving new orders. Not from your mind is being overruled. Not from your emotions, they're being recalibrated. The orders are coming from a frequency so high, so pure, that your old operating system can't even process it. So it's shutting down. That exhaustion you feel, it's not age, it's download. That confusion clouding your thoughts, it's not dementia, it's defragmentation. Your entire identity, everything you thought you were, everything you tried to become, is being formatted for a complete system replacement. And you can't stop it. Thank God you can't stop it. Because if you could, you would. Your ego would convince you to settle for polish when heaven is offering complete metamorphosis. Your fear would beg for familiar dysfunction rather than divine disruption. Your pride would rather wear makeup than undergo surgery. But this holy operation doesn't require your consent. It only requires your surrender. You've been trying to die to self for years, reading about it, praying about it, beating yourself up because you couldn't quite achieve it. What you didn't understand is that you can't kill what God must remove. You can't perform your own resurrection. You can only lay down on the table and let the master surgeon work. And he's working now. Right now. As these words penetrate your spirit, as tears gather in eyes that have cried too many times before, as your chest tightens with recognition, he's working. Feel that trembling in your core. That's not anxiety. That's architecture shifting. The foundation of who you thought you were is cracking because it was never meant to hold the weight of who you're becoming. You were trying to build a cathedral on quicksand, wondering why you kept sinking. Tonight, the quicksand gives way to bedrock. But first, everything built on lies must fall. Every identity you wore for survival, every mask you crafted for acceptance, every version of yourself you presented to earn love, avoid rejection, or fit into spaces too small for your destiny, yet all has to go. And it hurts. God, it hurts. It hurts like birth hurts, like butterfly wings breaking through cocoon walls, like resurrection morning when stone rolls away and death discovers it has no power here. You're not being punished. You're being promoted to a level of existence your old self couldn't access. But promotion in the kingdom doesn't come through earthly elevation. It comes through holy devastation, followed by divine reconstruction. This is why your life felt like it was falling apart. Every loss was planned, every failure was strategic, every closed door was mercy. Because God wasn't trying to improve your prison, he was planning your escape. The you that needed validation, deleted. The you that craved approval, overwritten. The you that measured worth by productivity, archived and removed. What's being installed is something your mind can't comprehend because your mind is part of what's being replaced. You're not getting a new perspective, you're getting new eyes. You're not receiving fresh wisdom, you're getting a different brain. You're not finding your purpose, you're becoming it. This is complete cellular regeneration at a spiritual level. This is Lazarus walking out of the tomb, not improved but impossible. This is Saul becoming Paul, note, through self-improvement, but through blinding light and total system failure, followed by divine reboot. You wanted God to polish your personality. He's giving you a new nature. You asked him to fix your problems. He's eliminating the you that had them. You begged for better coping mechanisms. He's removing your need to cope. Because the you he's creating doesn't need coping strategies. It needs only communion. It doesn't need defense mechanisms. It moves in divine authority. It doesn't need validation from earth, because it carries verification from heaven. Tomorrow, you'll wake up in the same bed, but you won't be the same being. The mirror will show familiar features arranged in an unfamiliar way. Your voice will sound different, not in tone, but in authority. Your presence will feel heavier, not with burden, but with glory. People will ask what happened. You won't have words because human language wasn't designed to describe resurrection. You'll simply smile with eyes that have seen the other side of dying and lived to tell no, lived to be story. This isn't reformation, it's replacement. This isn't renewal, it's resurrection. This isn't you getting better, it's you getting born. The old you fought for decades to become acceptable. The new you simply is. And that's the difference between polish and power. Tonight, you stop trying to shine. Tonight, you become light itself. The spirits that hunted you can't recognize your new form. They thought fear would break you. It backfired. For decades, you felt them circling, those invisible predators. The ones that knew exactly when to strike right when your faith wavered, right when loneliness crept in at 2 a.m., right when the doctor's words still echoed in your ears. They had your scent. They knew your patterns, every weakness catalogued, every scar memorized. But tonight something magnificent happens. The hunter becomes the hunted. The prey transforms into something unrecognizable. And those spirits that tormented you for 60, 70, 80 years, they're about to lose their target forever. You see, hell operates like a military intelligence unit. They keep files, detailed records of what makes you stumble, what whispers make you doubt, which memories still make you weep in the shower when no one's listening. They've studied you longer than you've studied yourself. But God, oh God, just lit a match. Your spiritual signature is changing. Right now, as these words reach your spirit, something is shifting in the unseen realm. That old frequency you've been broadcasting, the one marked by grief, marked by betrayal, marked by that thing that happened in 1987 that you never told anyone about, it's dissolving. You didn't know you had a spiritual signature, did you? Like a fingerprint in the spirit realm. Every time you prayed through tears, it left a mark. Every time you forgave when you wanted revenge, it altered the pattern. Every night you sang hymns to keep the darkness at bay, you were actually rewriting your celestial DNA. And those hunters, they're about to lose their lock. You know what it feels like when a radio station starts to fade as you drive beyond its range. That static, that confusion, that desperate searching for a signal that's no longer there. That's what's happening to every spirit assigned to your destruction. They're frantically searching for the you they used to torment. But that person, that beautiful, broken, brave soul who carried wounds like medals, they're gone, transformed, elevated beyond recognition. The warfare you endured in secret. Let me tell you what heaven saw that no one else did. The night terrors that started after your spouse passed. Heaven saw the generational curse that tried to claim your children like it claimed your parent. Heaven saw the financial attacks that came precisely when you tried to tithe. The illness that manifested exactly when you started that ministry. The family betrayals that cut deeper than any stranger's blade. Heaven saw everything. You fought battles in bathrooms and bedrooms. You waged war in hospital waiting rooms. You stood your ground in grocery store aisles when panic tried to consume you. No medals, no recognition, no backup. Just you and the Ancient of Days. You learned to fight different. While others swung swords, you learned to stand still. While others shouted battle cries, you learned the power of a whispered nevertheless. You didn't fight fire with fire, you transcended the battlefield entirely. And that's why they're panicking now. Hell had a file on your old self. Imagine a cosmic filing cabinet, dark and precise. Your name, written in some demonic script. Inside, every trigger, every weak point, every generational vulnerability passed down like a cursed heirloom. Subject responds to rejection with isolation. Target weakens under financial pressure. Specimen carries unhealed father wounds, mother wounds, church wounds. They thought they had you figured out. A lifetime of reconnaissance, generations of attack patterns, ancestral chains so thick they could hear them rattle from 3 realms away. But tonight, God walks into that filing room with a blazing torch. And he doesn't just burn your file, he burns the entire cabinet. He burns the room, he burns the building. He leaves nothing but holy ash where your vulnerabilities used to be stored. Those spirits are showing up to hunt someone who no longer exists. Your new form. This isn't death, it's metamorphosis at the cellular level of your spirit. Remember when Moses came down from the mountain and his face shone so bright they couldn't look at him? That's happening to your spirit right now. You're becoming luminous in places that used to be shadows. You're growing wings where you once wore chains. The fear that used to paralyze you, it can't find a place to land anymore. The shame that used to suffocate you, it's like trying to drown a fish impossible because you breathe different air now. The generational curse that claimed your grandmother, your mother, it stops here, tonight, with you. You're not just healed, you're transformed. You're not just delivered, you're transfigured. And here's what terrifies the darkness most. You did it through surrender, not strength. You did it through worship, not warfare. You broke their system by refusing to play their game. Divine protection through transformation. Those predator spirits, they're circling empty air now, confused, disoriented, like bloodhounds who've lost the scent at the river's edge. They're searching for the person who used to cry in that specific chair, but that person has been absorbed into glory. They're hunting for the weak spots that used to make you vulnerable at family gatherings, but those wounds have become weapons of testimony. They're looking for the you who used to wake up at 3 a.m. in cold sweats. But that you, that beautiful battle-worn you, has been clothed in garments they cannot perceive, speaking a frequency they cannot decode, walking in dimensions they cannot access. You didn't run from the hunters. You didn't hide from the predators. You simply became something they were never trained to catch. The sound of confusion in hell. Listen. Do you hear that? That's the sound of demonic conferences being called. Emergency meetings in the second heaven. Where did they go? The target just vanished. The one we've been tormenting since 1962. Their signal just went dark. They're sending out scouts. They're checking all the old triggering places, the mirror where you used to hate your reflection, the kitchen table where loneliness used to eat with you, the empty side of the bed that used to mock you. But you're not there anymore. You're not anywhere they know to look, because you can't hunt what you can't recognize. You can't trap what transcends your snares. You can't destroy what's been hidden in the secret place of the Most High. Your vindication is here. This is your moment of divine vindication. Every tear has been counted. Every secret battle has been recorded. Every time you chose faith over fear when no one was watching, heaven was taking notes. And tonight, heaven says, enough. Tonight, your spiritual DNA changes so radically that hell's most experienced hunters will walk right past you and not know who you are. Tonight, you become invisible to the enemy and radiant to the kingdom. Tonight, you stop being the hunted and start being the hidden. Hidden in plain sight, hidden in glory, hidden in a frequency so high that darkness can't even perceive it. The spirits that hunted you are about to learn what it feels like to lose their most practiced target. They're about to discover what happens when God says, "This one belongs to me, and I'm taking them higher than your reach." You didn't fall. You rose. You didn't run. You stood. You didn't flinch. You smiled. Because you knew something they didn't. The hunter of your soul was never them. It was always him. And he just caught you, transformed you, and released you as something they'll never catch again. Hell had a file on your old self. But tonight, God burns the record and rewrites your name in letters of fire that only heaven can read. Beloved, as we close this sacred moment together, let me remind you of the profound truth that has just been revealed to your spirit. You are no longer the person who entered this message. The hunters have lost their target. The old files have been burned. Your spiritual DNA has been rewritten in the ink of heaven. That fear that used to know your address, it's knocking on the wrong door now. The generational chains that held your bloodline for decades, they're trying to grip smoke. Remember this. You didn't just survive, you transcended. You didn't just escape, you transformed. And those spirits that studied you for years, that knew every weakness, every wound, every vulnerable moment, they're searching for someone who no longer exists. You are not alone in this journey. I need you to hear this with every fiber of your being. You are not walking this path in isolation. Right now, at this very moment, thousands of chosen ones, just like you, are experiencing this same divine transformation. In living rooms across America, in hospital beds, in quiet apartments where the world has forgotten to visit, God is moving. We are a family, a spiritual army that doesn't march with weapons but with worship. We don't fight with force but with faith. And every single one of us stands ready to hold you up when your arms grow tired. Heaven isn't just aware of your transformation, heaven is celebrating it. Angels are rejoicing over what happened to you tonight. The cloud of witnesses is cheering for your breakthrough. And this community, your spiritual family, we're here, we're praying, we're believing, we're standing in the gap. Family, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me what shifted in your spirit during this message. What chain broke? What fear lost its grip? Your testimony might be exactly what another chosen one needs to hear. If you felt that Hunter lose your scent tonight, type "I am transformed" in the comments. Let heaven and earth witness your declaration. And please, if you know someone who's been fighting battles in secret, who feels like they're being hunted by generational spirits or persistent fear, share this message with them. You might be the angel God sends to deliver their breakthrough. Remember, we're not meant to transform alone. We're meant to rise together. To every beautiful soul who stayed until the end, thank you. Thank you for trusting this process. Thank you for opening your spirit to receive. Thank you for being brave enough to believe that tonight could be different. If this message touched your spirit, if you felt the shift, if you know the hunters have lost your trail, please subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell, not because we need numbers, but because you need family. You need to be reminded regularly that you're not alone, that transformation is real, and that your new form is permanent. We release new messages of hope, transformation, and divine revelation every week. Each one is a love letter from heaven to remind you who you really are. Go now, transformed one. Walk in your new identity, sleep in perfect peace, wake in divine confidence. The spirits that hunted you are confused and searching for someone who no longer exists. You are free, you are transformed, you are unrecognizable to darkness and radiant to heaven. And remember, we're here. This family is here. God is here. You're not alone, and you never will be again. Until we meet again in the next divine appointment, stay hidden in Him, stay transformed, and stay free. Peace be with your spirit, tonight and always.